Problematic women are not above criticism. And I know that that makes some people really angry. They are poised in the comments. Their keyboards are probably smoking because they're typing at me so furiously for saying that. Typically, when an attractive woman comes under fire for something and she starts getting scrutinized, that tends to be the knee-jerk reaction that most of the public has. Well, stop! Don't criticize her. She has had to overcome so many barriers to get to where she is, and she's a woman doing what she's doing, which are not completely irrelevant arguments. But a lot of times our initial response as the general public is reflective of the human experience. Humans don't like to see attractive people have to defend themselves or be criticized for whatever reason. We like perfect pictures in our brains. And so therefore we believe that attractive people should get to be attractive without any negativity. And I personally believe that this is because women tend to carry this unearned reputation of having nurturing qualities and being inherently innocent and inherently non-threatening. Many women often get prescribed this childlike innocence as they move through the world. And so therefore, it looks bad that you're trying to hold this person who is so young and so naive so accountable for things. And a lot of this portrayal of women being childlike also plays very nicely into patriarchy, because we become these subservient creatures who don't know anything and therefore need a man to lead us. But before we go further, hello, my name is Antoinette Chanel. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if this isn't your first rodeo. I do subscribe to the idea of womanhood being a team, most definitely. We get so much cut off from us inherently because people believe that women could never be responsible for making serious decisions. They think that we can't be good leaders, that we can't make good investments. There's just this bias that people tend to have towards anything that is described as being female or feminine or woman associated. And of course, in order to make any team the best that it can possibly be, you have to have standards by which you are evaluating the members. You know, it's like a baseline for what good behavior looks like, and anything that falls underneath that, we're saying that that's problematic because you are not meeting the standard. And I think that this concept works very nicely in practice when we are teaching women and girls about going out with your friends and how you stick together as a group. And if you showed up together, then you leave together. We're not gonna let some rando run off with our friend who's intoxicated and probably can't consent. I think it also gets applied nicely when we have the conversation about body positivity, although I tend to prefer body neutrality more than anything. But when we have these conversations about how women shouldn't be appraised just based off of what they look like, what their bodies are shaped like. I like when those conversations veer into the differences in anatomy that women have from men and how that shows up in what our bodies tend to look like. Yet there is still this persistent force that insists that anybody who is calling out or criticizing a woman is being too harsh, that they're being unfair, that it is some sort of unjust critique. I just don't like the way that this conveniently erases accountability for some women, such as the pretty ones, or the skinny ones, or the fair ones. Because women are not above accountability even when they are pretty, even when they are successful, even when they do meet European beauty standards. So one example that I want to point to right now that I've learned about mainly from other content creators here on this app, because I don't really go on TikTok like that, but there's this woman named Haley Beck. I guess she's a teacher, and she is the older sister of another guy who is like really popular on the TikTok app. Haley Beck's issue is that she almost exclusively hangs out with her students. She likes to date some of her students, and the school that she works at that school, she's not the only female teacher who's doing that. There's probably some males who are doing it too, but in Haley Beck's case, she and several other teachers are also in on this whole like dating the students kind of thing, and treating the female students harshly. So like they have this grudge against a girl who is the same age as the guy that they want to date or sleep with because she had the audacity to date this guy who was her age. And so they'll like treat her really bad, and then they play favorites with the dudes. Go look it up. It's a crazy story. I actually heard about it from Olay. Go listen to Olay's breakdown about this because it's crazy. But a lot of people assume that women could never be pedophiles. Women should always be trusted around children. And that's a really great example of, no, not always. Women can be abusive and inappropriate too. And I've also noticed that some women like to use this like concept of sisterhood amongst women as a shield. And to me, that's just a yellow brick road to delusion, because essentially what we're doing is not being honest with ourselves. So that means that we go on this yellow brick road of delusion straight into the land of deceit where we're lying to ourselves. And then anything goes, and the rules are merely suggestions at that point. So let's look at another example. Caitlin Clark. If you've been living under a rock, Caitlin Clark is a WNBA darling, depending on who you speak to. Some people might say that she brought lots of positive attention to the WNBA, and they have more viewership now because of her. Other people will say Caitlin Clark is not an anomaly. She's just another player who happened to come into the WNBA, but she's marketable because she's a white WNBA player. And I really don't have a dog in the fight. I don't watch the NBA or the WNBA. I think basketball is boring no matter who's playing it. But specifically in the case of Caitlin, she's far from the best player who is playing in the WNBA league right now. And I personally have seen videos of her at more than one game, so on multiple occasions, stomping at referees, yelling, whining, looking like she wanted to cry because she couldn't get the referees to make the call that she was looking for. And see, this is where, I guess I gotta give them a name. We wanna call them feminist foot soldiers, maybe? I don't know. We'll try that one out for now. But this is usually when people start marching in to cast this protective barrier over Caitlin Clark, as if we can't speak about any of the stuff that she does that is unappealing or off-putting or just straight up foul. Because how could you say that when she's so young and she's just starting out? And then they often will start making comparisons to people like Angel Reese or Aja Wilson, because those black girls are so mean to her and they don't treat her right. And Caitlin worked so hard for this, as if everyone didn't have to meet the same qualifications to get into the league that she did. Feminist foot soldiers love to defend their precious white women while casting black women in the light of being bullies, or you guys are just mean, or you're being exclusionary, etc. I also don't like when these comparisons start happening that inevitably someone always wants to take it into, well, I think that that black woman is a man, you know, that's a man. We actually just had something come up recently with the 250th anniversary celebration they had on the White House lawn here in my country. It was gross, but you know, that's often an insult that people will reach for when they are trying to make a dig at a black woman, especially if they want to elevate a white woman over a black woman. They'll call her a man. And like I said, Caitlin's got her fans, she's got her critics. She's far from the best in terms of stats or accolades, championships, awards, anything that she has earned. Like, she's not Diana Taurasi, she's not Lisa Leslie, she's not Tamika Catchings or Maya Moore, and she's not Aja Wilson. She tends to be a crybaby toddler at times, and people have every right to not want to engage with that, not be a fan of that. Another woman that I make no secret in having criticisms for is Meghan Markle. Ooh, people really do not like when you speak negatively about Meghan Markle, because Meghan has done a really good job of creating a narrative around herself under which she has been persecuted because of her race. The royal family demonized her and her children because of her race. That is the narrative that Meghan Markle has chosen to ride on, especially since Megxit. And I've got plenty of videos on this channel where I detail a lot of what went down with all of that. I'm just not a fan. Personally, I think that if Meghan was being called out on the basis of her race, she should name exactly who those people were so that we can point at them and shame them. I've been walking around in this black skin my whole life, so I know that the response to racism, whether it's overt or covert, is that you call that person out and you shame them for it. So I feel like the fact that we haven't gotten any specific names, we've just got implications, a lot of which tend to point to Catherine Middleton. I'd like to see something more tangible from Meghan before I'm going to run with this whole, like, you were discriminated against because you were a black woman. I don't consider her to be a black woman. She is a mixed race woman, and she has a black mother. Why can't we just call her that? But in the case of Meghan, a lot of her fans will come at anybody who criticizes her because they think that you are supporting the idea of people being racist against her, and you like that, and you like Andrew, and you support pedophilia, and you support that family, which is a total conflation. No, I just want to see some proof, tangible proof of the things that you're saying. Who in the press was writing racial epithets about you? Who was publishing those? Show us those. Tell us the writer's name. And when you went on Oprah, an interview that you can't find publicly anymore, by the way, how come you weren't being specific there either? Who was having the conversation about what your baby's skin was going to look like? Was it Kate? Was it Willie? Was it Andrew? Was it Princess Anne? Was it the Queen herself? Meghan has also told us a story about crying on her wedding day because she had a conflict with Catherine. But the official record on what happened seems to be disputed because Harry tells one version of it in his book Spare, whereas Tom Bower and other insiders with the royal family have a different version of that story that says that Catherine was the one who was crying, and it was because of something that Meghan said to her. And look, all these people are above my pay grade. I mean, I don't have anything against Catherine and William, but I'm not here to defend the monarchy and, claim these people to be innocent, great, wonderful individuals either. What do I look like doing that as a black woman? But it seems like if you have a very clear message about your abuse and how you've been mistreated, it should be much more easy to prove and point to evidence for it than all of the back and forth that we've had to do about everything surrounding Meghan's time in the royal family, why they stepped back, and what things have been like since. Meghan has also claimed that nobody in the royal family stepped up to help her to adjust to what that life was like. No one taught her anything. Nobody connected her with anything. And that's not true either. We know for a fact that the Queen appointed her private secretary, Sam Cohen, to work with Meghan to help her get adjusted to royal life. And Sam Cohen is no rookie. She worked for the Queen for like 16 or 17 years. But I'll shoot Meghan some bail because Queen Elizabeth was a problematic woman too. Yes, she was a beloved monarch, especially in the modern age. I mean, people in the UK mourned for weeks after she passed away. And I've mentioned in my previous content covering the royals that is not something I'm familiar with because here in the United States, we just don't revere our politicians that way, especially now that our political system has been completely corrupted. But a lot of us who are millennial aged remember the death of Princess Diana. We remember what a tough time Diana had in the royal family and how her life was put to a tragic end in ways that a lot of people have tried to connect with the crown, with the Queen, with the royal family. And I don't want to get in the weeds too much about that because that's not what this video is about, but it's amazing how we don't hear very loud criticism of Queen Elizabeth having shielded Andrew from the consequences of his deviancy, because that man, he liked to sleep with kids. If the Queen were really a girl's girl and a stand-up woman, then she never would have made excuses for Andrew. She never would have allowed for the shielding of his visibility in what he has done with Epstein and his friends. And last but certainly not least, I just want to make example of Katy Perry, just for the sake of my argument about problematic women not being above criticism. Because Katie had quite the 2025, because she's an astronaut now. She also now has an allegation that was made against her by Ruby Rose in 2026. She claims to be dating Justin Trudeau, but this was after she told us that her partnership with Orlando Bloom was solid and that they were great. She even put out an album where, she said that he's mine and not yours or something like that. And look, she's a pop star, she appeals to certain people. She has her fan base, her key demographic, all of that. But I would say that a lot of the reason why Katy Perry has been allowed to sort of just float through life as someone who doesn't really care about a lot of things and says a whole bunch of stuff that's very problematic and inappropriate on public stages. And she regales the public with details that we're not really looking for. Ultimately, Katie's actions tend to reflect poorly on womanhood as a collective, thinking that because you went up on a space flight that took you a fingernail's length into space, one where you didn't even have to wear a suit or a helmet, but you floated around up there for like 5 minutes and then you came right back down. Thinking that makes you an astronaut? Oh, honey, no. But then you're out here repeating it as if that's the way that the rest of us operate. It's very reminiscent of Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, if you ask me. Women have been making strides. We have been breaking barriers, but none of that becomes easier when someone takes an entitled, uninformed stance like the one that Katie took. And I think calling that out is appropriate. I think it's correct that we label what qualifications actually mean so that the women who do hold those credentials, they can get the credit that they deserve. And this is not to suggest that women who like to have fun, women who are pretty and attractive, women who, like to have public relationships, heterosexual relationships, that's not to say that those women are somehow undeserving or that they can't be smart or that they can't achieve things. I just think that just because the achievement is being applied to a woman, that doesn't mean that it becomes lesser or we move the goalposts a little bit closer for her. No, the whole idea is that women are able to accomplish the same things that men are. Same exact test, same exact assessment. And that's really all that I had on this topic, you guys. It just seems like so many conversations are being derailed by this idea that we should never ever say anything negative about a woman because, oh my gosh, she's a woman and she's tried so hard and she's doing this thing. And what are you doing? I bet you can't do that. You're not like her. Which, fine, okay, sure, I'm not. I'm not like Taylor Swift. I'm not like Jennifer Lopez. You're right. I would never try to go back to the town that I grew up in 30, 40 years later and expect the people living in my old home to recognize me and know who I am. And I would also never allow my brand to be described as being MAGA adjacent or adjacent to any sort of affiliation group that practices fascism, bigotry, racism, sexual deviancy, anything like that. I think that lifting women up is very powerful and that we need to continue to do so, especially as femicide continues to just rage out of control. Women are getting killed out here left and right, mostly by their intimate partners. So we have to band together in order to protect each other, in order to make sure that we're keeping each other informed about, hey, I dated that guy before and he was bad news. But we also need to hold each other accountable, and I don't think there's anything wrong with women wanting to see better from each other because they know that that makes the collective stronger. Those are my thoughts. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you liked what you saw and you want to see more from me, consider hitting that subscribe button so you can see all my playlists and get notified every time I upload to this channel. If you want to keep up with behind the scenes lifestyle stuff, you can follow me on Threads. Take care.